Hello, everyone. Hey, Stephen.
Good morning.
All right. Sorry, a couple minutes late here. The emails are flying fast and furious, as it were. Let's see, who do we have here? Give me 1 second to get oriented. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. So we're good. We got a quorum. 4. Okay. So I'm going to jump right in. This morning, September 3rd, approximately 11 a.m., script for the remotely conducted open meetings. My name is Stephen Welch, Chair of the Capital Program Committee. Before we call our meeting to order, I have the governor's script for remotely conducted meetings to work through. I'll do it very quickly. I'll start by confirming today's Zoom listeners have access in the order I see them. Hi, good morning, Jason. Jason Bridges. Myself, Peter McEachern. Richard Hussey.
I'm here.
Here.
And staff, in the order I see, Rick Sears. Rick, we'll come back to you. You're muted. Brian Turbitt.
Here.
Okay, we lost. Oh, there's Rick. Okay, great. Let's see. There are no anticipated speakers. We'll skip that. For today's remote meeting, please note the following. To mitigate transmission of COVID-19, the town of Nantucket has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. As a result, this open meeting of the Capital Program Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. That order, posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to convene remotely so long as public access is reasonably provided to access deliberations. My understanding is we're also being broadcast on YouTube to meet that condition. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This particular meeting will not feature public comment. This meeting is convening via Zoom video conference. The meeting is being video and audio recorded. Materials provided to the members for the meeting or provided during the meeting are, unless otherwise noted, available on the town's website. As chair, I'll introduce topics and speakers on the agenda as they come up. If speaking, please hold until your name is called. All present, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, to state your full name before speaking, and to speak clearly for the meeting minutes, to direct comments and questions through the chair. Lastly, formal votes, if any, will be conducted via roll call. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and get an approval of the agenda. Get a motion on the approval.
So moved.
Thank you, Richard. Peter McEachern.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Richard, on your motion.
Aye.
And myself. Okay. We covered audio, video. Brian, first thing on the agenda is the FY22 start date, and we've been emailing this morning on that. Can you confirm it will be, who it will be, and that we'll have complete information available, and when we'll have it available, please?
Well, it was, as we discussed on the 27th, it'll be water company and airport, and haven't heard anything as of to the contrary. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong. And as we said before, we would make sure the information was available by Tuesday at some point early morning so that people could go in and have 2 full nights to look at it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my recollection in looking at the tape is that it was just we weren't 100% that those would be the 2 departments, but thank you. We know now that that's who we're focusing on, and we can move on that. So I think Next item on the agenda is the 10-year SIP. And the idea here was we would just begin to discuss elements of what would be included in our 10-year SIP. Currently, it's, you know, as we all know, it's a summary spreadsheet. And I'd sent out a couple of ideas just to kind of get the gears rolling. And I was hoping we could start this discussion this morning. So with that, I just kind of opened the floor for general comments from members. I did put together a small outline, as probably you'd imagine, but I'd like to get your feedback and thoughts. 10-year SIP in general and specifics. It's open floor. This is just a kind of a setting up the plan and developing a structure for it. So it's really a brainstorming session of which we'll have more. Peter, please.
As I iterated last week, I'd love to hear Brian's and Rick's thoughts, what they would like to see, what would help them, and how do we get there. I think that, you know, we as a committee can help that along, but it's good to hear what the staff would love.
Sure. So I actually got a little bit of pushback on that, and October 15th is something that is not something that's in the cards. So if this is an initiative that we want to take up, I would suggest we start to give it some structure. It along the lines of, a lot of times it's easier to comment on something that's in front of you versus creating it from scratch. So the idea is to be collaborative, to determine things, types of information we would like to put into our 10-year SIP plan. And then I agree, certainly wholeheartedly, have staff weigh in and give us direction on, well, this would be helpful, this won't be helpful, this may be something you all want or the community may need, but it doesn't serve our purpose, which then can start to create discussions of sequencing and prioritization and so on and so forth.
Stephen, what's the pushback?
Just the staff resources are pressed to the point that they're not going to have, basically, this is not an initiative that is being taken up by the town administration at this time.
So why wouldn't we want to follow that and just work with the town and
Well,
press?
Sure, because from my standpoint, you know, I'm looking at what's typically included in a capital improvement plan, and it's, well, two things. One is, one of our obligations is to provide a 10-year SIP. What we've been doing is getting a list that's incomplete for a variety of reasons, and presenting that occasionally to the FinCom, where we're told, well, this is incomplete information, or why has this changed from year to year? Basically, we're not pursuing our due diligence in providing a 10-year SIP if we're just providing a list and we're not vetting that list. We're also not pursuing and completing our due diligence if we're not actually developing a well thought out plan. The idea being that a 10-year plan, really a 5-year plan, but 10-year gives us a broad horizon, is what's going to help dictate where our expenses are going. It's going to help. Go ahead.
Sorry, I understand that, Stephen. I mean, but if the source of the data and the numbers can't provide, then why should we pursue as a committee, and just to put numbers on a chart that may be somewhat placeholders and meaningless? I'm just.
Sure. No, I get you. I think I'm failing to communicate, so my apology. I'm not talking, the way that I anticipate a 10-year SIP is that summary is only one element of the plan. The plan consists of other elements such as an introduction, an intention. What are the goals of the 10-year SIP? What are the planning policy objectives? What are intended outcomes? What are a summary of priorities other than goals and objectives and intentions? What reports would we like to see included? For instance, debt service, assets, inventory sheet summaries,
Yeah.
The facilities master plan. I mean, there's a whole list of things that I think we as a committee could be developing into a outline structure of what a plan would look like on paper.
Yeah.
And is that helping to communicate at least the concept? I'm not suggesting you have to agree with it, but I want to be sure I'm being clear.
No, I understand what you've mentioned, but so I would say, why don't we not try to reinvent it from day one or from scratch? Why don't we as a group reach out to other communities within the Commonwealth?
Right.
Other communities' plans, and at least there's something to start with.
Sure.
Not that we haven't started, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. And actually, two things. One, this gets right to the point that I was making about if we can provide something in writing to staff, it makes it a little bit easier for them to then comment on. The other is what I've done is I've looked into the DOR information on what's typically included in these reports, and then drawn from other municipal resources to come up with a structure, a loose structure just in terms of the list of items I just provided you. So what I was hoping to do was to begin that discussion, and this is part of it. And it sounds like what you would like to do is perhaps get a black and white copy of something that's already in print and use that to start with.
Yeah, what I'd really like is for Brian and the town to provide that to us. Once again, I think we get into a territory of micromanaging if we're trying to create something that they don't have or they haven't used. And I'd rather that come from them. And if the time is not today, then there's always tomorrow. Like I said, I'm not hung up on it, but it's got to come from the source. It's got to come from the town.
Okay, thank you. Jason and then Brian. Or Jason, were you just?
Just clicking my pen, sorry.
Oh. Brian?
Mr. Chairman, to Peter's point, Rick and I have already started reviewing some other communities' plans. Even though it's substantially larger than us, the city of Boston has a pretty amazing capital plan online that we have already started reviewing and kind of looking at, okay, what works for us and what doesn't work for us. So that's something we actually have already kind of started. I think that, I don't want to speak for the town manager, but I think the pushback was given the compressed time frame that we're trying to do capital budgets and everything in, basically since we've lost about a month or so of time that we would have been focusing on this. October is just a really difficult date to hit since it's basically like 30 plus days away. And we're barely starting capital right now, and right on the heels of starting capital with this group is going to be getting into budgets with departments. So it's just, there's a lot of, and I'm not trying to downplay the importance of the 10-year plan, because I think that coming up with a really great solution on what we're looking for and what we want to see in it and how we want to present it is really falls in line with the financial policies and procedures, and falls in line with all of the things that have really helped us, get to the point that we're at. But I think it's just more, right now it's just the bandwidth, and trying to get everything done in a very compressed time frame makes the October date very difficult to hit. And I don't think it would be any of our desire to give you something that isn't is thrown together at the last minute just to try to get to a deadline, to be honest with you. And I don't think that would serve myself, Rick, or the town manager very well, and it certainly wouldn't serve the committee as a whole very well.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been looking at the Boston plan quite a bit, and it's comprehensive beyond a level that we can deliver as volunteers, and certainly even as staff. But yeah, I think I did try to clear this up with Rick the other day. I think there's a kind of a misconception. I was not intending the October 15th date as a result of our discussions at the last meeting to be, okay, we want you to give us the structure for a 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. We were specifically talking about what types of thresholds and accuracy and really accuracy, precision, and in relation to dollar numbers would be included. All I was expecting by that date was maybe a comment or two on the worthiness of that and how we might go about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that is something that probably is foreseeably doable.
Right. And then
that's fine.
Right. And then Brian, the idea was, for me at least, looking at the bigger picture in terms of facilitating meetings and planning out the longer term schedule, that would just be information that we as a committee would interleave into the discussion of what to include in a plan. I have no concerns about having, other than resources, having staff put together an outline for a plan. I think that there's a couple things that come up in relation if we take that path. One is, Rick is here, so we're not into, hopefully if everyone is responsible, no one is accountable, and then we don't get a plan. So if we do something like that, when we get to that point, I would like to put some action items together and some dates. The other thing is that, the town has gotten by with what we used to turn in for our annual recommendations and report, which was a list.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern based on that experience, history is not an indicator of future performance, is that we're not going to maybe get as thorough an approach as would benefit the community. Now, I acknowledge that has to be balanced against what our resources can fill the data with, but a lot of this is just information that's going to be in the database. Jason and Christy, welcome. Good morning.
Yeah, I think whatever the town and the departments can provide with this is a little bit of a clunky year would be great. If it's an outline for a plan, that's great. Because what I'm looking for, I know what Peter, what you're looking at is the facilities master plan. As that gets done, that's going to help us with long-term capital planning. And so just kind of trying to keep that in mind. Brian, do you know if that RFP went out? Where does that stand?
I think that the facilities department with DPW is working through putting it together. They haven't approached us about any help at this point, but I can certainly check and report back to you for next meeting.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to keep us in mind that that's coming down the road. So this would fall in line with that long-term capital planning that you're asking for.
Right. And so one of the things I'm thinking about, just to work that back in the discussion of the SIP, the 10-year SIP, is, do we feel as a committee it's important to have an inventory that's not necessarily part of the published SIP, but is referenced and available for committee members, the members of the public, department heads? I mean, this is a tool, it's a resource that could be developed using the database or other software. Part of that inventory is what do we do with the inventory? And then that flows into the facilities master plan. So we have inventory of different categories. One of them is buildings, structures. And then the other is, what is the plan in keeping with the long-term financial policies and procedures of the town? So part of our SIP process, since we don't have a fully worked out plan, is helping to, I believe, is helping to develop those aspects of this, this being the 10-year SIP. I mean, look, I'm not looking for more work. There's plenty to be doing today, tomorrow, and through, the next 6 years. It's a matter of, helping to create a sense of direction and even to some extent a sense of urgency so that action is undertaken, and then assigning some deliverable dates. And I mean, I'd like to get your feedback on that, because I sense tension on it from through town admin, and I don't want to be in that position. I'm just trying to do the job. But if it's something you guys don't think we should be doing, or we shouldn't be doing now, or we should be doing differently, I'm looking for feedback. All right. Yeah, I realize that's a hot potato. So it sounds like what we're going to do is table our 10-year SIP. Is that what I'm hearing? For now, until staff have time to take this up on their own accord.
I think that's what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Peter McEachern?
Yes, I agree with that. That we should table until admin and finance is ready.
All right. Are we tabling to revisit at a certain date, or are we tabling outright? Or I just want to.
No, certain date. A certain date.
Okay. And Jason?
Yeah, I think they can come up with a certain date, and whether it's an outline, and they know it's a priority for us. I think it's very clear. And then town admin and finance can come back, whether that's later this winter or in the spring, or I think we just, it's known that it's a priority, and we can wait to hear from them.
Okay. So our direction then would be, as part of pursuing this, is that we would like to request a response on when to anticipate an outline. Is that accurate? Okay, there's no dissent on that? Okay. Okay, that makes for a nicely short meeting. I'm thrilled. So Brian, I mean, just to turn that into an action item, if I may, you know, I think it's pretty clear what we're looking for then is through, you know, you and Rick, is an idea of when we would see an outline. And if you could also address to some extent, you know, the number side of it in terms of accuracy and precision of the benefits and the, you know, the pros and cons of including dollar numbers at certain year intervals, I think would be helpful for us to try and manage our process as we move forward on it. Okay. Let's see. Bear with me, I gotta pull up the agenda. Green sheets, committee reports, is it, you know, I would like to suggest that our liaisons report back to their respective committees that we will be starting the FY22 review September 10th. And we'll be starting with airport and the Wanna And obviously, you know, I don't think we need to report each department as we go, but I don't think it hurts. It gives them an opportunity to kind of understand where we are. Along those lines, Brian, can you give us an update on access, FinCom access primarily, I believe, to SIP request details so that they can be informed early and often? I note that didn't make it to our schedule with the cross committee schedule. So that initiative is, I'm a little confused. So I'd like to get some clarification, please.
I have not figured out how to give them access without creating additional issues within the software, i.e. Rory's and everything, and multiple and 1,000 emails to them. So I'm trying to figure out how to do it right now still, but it will be done relatively shortly. It shouldn't take long once we come up with a solution to be able to do it.
Peter, thank you, Brian.
Brian, would we be breaking any rules if we just gave FinCom members access to my portal?
Sure, because yours has the Rory's in it.
Yeah,
and they could go in and do the Rory's, and you might be okay with that. You might like that as an idea. I don't know if that was what the intent actually was. It's great, you can go in and do them, but I don't know that I want to do that. I think there is an easy way to do it. We just have to continue to flush it out with Plum. And admittedly, Mr. Chairman, the focus has been getting all of the updates and everything we needed to be done to properly allow you guys and get the Capcom the ability to do the work that they need to do has been more of the focus than sorting out how to get an additional 7 people or 8, 9 people access to the software right now. In all of the changes that we've been trying to make, that's been more of the focus on reviewing those with Plum and making sure that the project's carried over correctly, making sure new RORIs are created, making sure that some of the other minor changes that we had looked at were actually done and implemented so that they can be moved forward. Now that the majority of that work has been done, we can reconvene with them and say, can we create a specific committee that has only read-only access? And if so, can we set it up so that we can move forward?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. You know, it seems, and I don't know to what extent it will actually play out, but it seems as if FinCom would like to have access. Our discussions in the work group, they would like to have that access. They would like to have it early. I agree with that. I think it's important simply for the fact that it's like the RORIs. Once you start to fall behind, you know, it's hard to catch up. So if they have access and they don't use it, that's really on the individual member. But if they have an interest in a particular request, I think it's important they have it. And I understand and agree with your comments about, you know, implementation and priorities. So just to give that a target date, what are you thinking at this point?
Depending on the complexity, I would say no later than after your 17th meeting, just because we've got a lot of things to do. So, and I want to make sure it works. So, I mean, that wouldn't put them very far behind anyway. There'd be basically one group that would have met, and then we'd be rolling things out. The thing is that because we roll these to you, say the Tuesday before all of your meetings, they're not going to see them any earlier than as we advance them through, right?
Right.
So they would be able to see them once we did this basically at the same time as you did, because we'd only allow them to see what was the same as advancing to you guys would then open the portal up to them for those particular projects.
Sure.
So,
No, that makes perfect sense. And then I think the idea is that it's not necessarily that they review them at the exact same time we do, but
right.
I think for scheduling and rep their liaisons and question answer, it would be more productive to do that. So what I would ask is that the liaisons can update their respective public body, just that access will be on or around as of now, that access would be on or around September 17th.
Yep.
That's
what we'll shoot for.
Okay, thank you.
If we can deliver it earlier, then great, but that will be the deadline that we'll shoot for.
No, that's great, Brian. That's very helpful. And I think just to have some idea of timelines in our own minds is a good thing. So that's kind of green sheets. Is there anything on committee reports? Peter McEachern?
A question to you, Brian, if I may. Relevant to any of the capital requests for our next fiscal year, if there's anything within that capital request that relates to an operating budget where it's maybe a new added expense or a potential new employee or anything of that nature, I'm assuming that admin will weigh in and alert us that from that standpoint, even if you bought the fixed asset or repaired the fixed asset, you may not be able to use it because of other budgetary cuts on operating budgets. So I think that's...
Yes. Yeah, it will be in there, and the goal and what we're striving to do is, and my discussions with Rick has been, if new personnel are needed, even though the functionality is not quite there for this, we'll manually input that in there so it'll be able to be seen and highlighted, and then a discussion can be had on that particular topic if the Capcom so desires.
I think it's good for us to know in any normal operation.
I think it is good. I would probably venture a guess to say that given the complete uncertainty of what fiscal 22 might actually look like, I don't know that there'll be a lot of new positions that will be being added. So that may make some decisions with capital a little bit more pressing, but we'll deal with that as we go through the process.
Thank you.
Great. Christy?
Brian, are the department heads well aware what doesn't apply to the difference between the capital and the line item in their budget, or they just kind of throw stuff in and you guys sift through it?
After me being here for 6 years, Christy, I'm hoping that they understand that the threshold is $50,000 and above. I think that we still sometimes work through, should we bundle a whole bunch of smaller things together if it's projects and do it. I know the airport has done that, the school has done that periodically, but I do believe that all the departments are aware that the threshold is 50,000 and above for capital. So I don't envision a scenario where you're going to get, or I don't expect a scenario where you're going to get a project for 25,000 that you would be expected to review, because we would hope that our internal review would call those out beforehand to not create that uncertainty or that disconnect.
Yeah. Brian, on the, thank you, Christy. Brian, on the request, I'd like to add, maybe Rick will have more granular detail here. If there are requests that are coming in and there's modifications, they're last year requests, but they're modifications, can we just kind of, put a little tick in the description somewhere? Because when we're reviewing them in a preliminary fashion as the members, it'll be a lot quicker to know if there's a plus preceding the description that it's, or FY21 plus, then we'll know it was an FY21 request plus there's a change, or it was just an FY21, or maybe we can assume they're all FY21s. I don't really care how you do it, but I think it would be helpful if there's going to be 47 requests as opposed to having to go back through our recollections after COVID fog to remember which ones are which ones have previously been submitted, and whether a change has occurred. If you could just maybe put a little indicator and just be clear what it is, a keynote of some fashion would be helpful.
Probably put something in the notes section, or we could send you a recap of the changes to them somehow. I can tell you that every fiscal 21 project that was not submitted to annual town meeting is now in fiscal 22.
Gotcha. So there'll be at least,
and they've been instructed to update those. So, and since we have prior year reports, we can go through and we can identify what the changes have been made to them prior to sending them to you for review.
Thank you. I'm not suggesting, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting if it's, a relatively minor, I think we can probably all agree without naming numbers what minor is, change, or it's a change in scope or something. I think if it were something material, it would be noted. And I do think it would be helpful if Rick, or you have the time, whomever, to put together a summary sheet of changes, just a quick list. But again, I'm not suggesting that for minor items, just anything that's, kind of a major change, so we're aware of it when we're going through and reviewing these in advance.
Okay, we could work on that for the committee.
We're shooting for half-hour meetings this year.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
I knew I'd get a smile out of you guys today. Just took a little while. Other than that, any other thoughts or comments on kind of that stuff? All right. So I think go to the order we can dispense with for today. Date of next meeting is Thursday, September 10th at 10 a.m. One item in your packets was the schedule. That's the schedule we reviewed over the last few meetings and approved. I will change, it includes cross-committee initiatives that we had suggested. I will change the heading on that for it to be posted to our website, with the distinction that there's a separate schedule that doesn't get into Capcom details. That is the annual timeline, the FY21 annual town meeting timeline. That will reference most everything any of our regular meetings as TBD. But our schedule is going to be detailed both for our tracking and implementation during the current year, and then as we use it as a template as we have in the past for the next year. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Minutes, I'm going to just ask, I've asked that we receive minutes in Word format, just so we can, if anyone wants to get into making revisions they feel are material, they can do that. So I'm going to ask to hold the minutes of August 13th, 20th, and 27th. I don't know, I guess we need a formal vote on that. Can I get a motion to hold? Richard,
So moved.
thank you. Peter McEachern,
Second, aye.
Christy Kickham. Aye. Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Richard Hussey,
Aye.
and myself, aye. With that, I would really enjoy a motion. Oh, Rick?
Sorry, if you were getting ready to sign off, I just have a quick process question for next week. So the department heads, your meeting is kept comes from 10 to 11:30. You want the department heads from 10 a.m. or is there 15 minutes of prologue and other sorts of things? And what would you like? Just so I can get them here at the right time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's a good question. I think typically the department head shows up at the beginning of the meeting so as not to disturb the meeting. In this venue, it's a little bit different, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea, because if for some reason something goes sideways with some information from the first department, the second is on deck, and that buys us time. It buys them time, and it gives us, we can be efficient and effective with our own use of our own time. I don't know who will be up first, so if you want to schedule someone to log in, I'd say just have them come in when the meeting starts, and they can leave as soon as we can possibly cut them free. Any thoughts on that, you guys? I mean, I'm happy to do it however you want. It makes sense to me to, okay. That's great. And then with that, a motion to adjourn, please. Richard, I see you.
Second.
So that'll be Richard's motion. Peter McEachern.
Yes.
I'll second his motion in aye.
All right, thank you. Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
and myself. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I do appreciate getting some direction on some of these things. It was very helpful this morning.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, everybody.
Take
See you
care.
next week.
Okay, bye-bye.